Hello and welcome back. In the last video, we learned how to define static URL routing in Django, where each path points to a fixed view function. But in real-world web applications, we often need URLs that can change dynamically. Like for example, user/John, where John could be a dynamic part of the URL, or books/15, where 15 is a dynamic part of the URL which could point to a book ID, or movie/42/inception, where inception is a dynamic part. That's exactly what we will learn today, dynamic URL routing in Django. So let's get started. So let's understand what dynamic URL routing is in Django. So dynamic routing allows us to make our URLs flexible and reusable. So instead of hard coding a URL for every single user or page, we define a pattern that captures part of the URL as a variable and passes it to our view. So let's take an example to understand this. So here in this example, we have a code snippet from the urls.py file of our project and a code snippet from the views.py file of the same project. So here we can see that in the urls.py file, we have the URL patterns like this. So in the path, we can see that we can type users followed by, you can see that a username variable is used here. So whenever we are making use of variables, we will be enclosing them within these angle brackets. So you see username is the variable or the dynamic part of the URL. So somebody can type users/ then some variable over here. So if that path is encountered, then the view called user_profile will be called. So in the views.py file, we can see that there is a user profile view or a function defined over here, user_profile. And then we can see that it takes two parameters. One is a request and another one is that username variable. So one thing to keep in mind is that this variable that you use here and the parameter that corresponding view takes should be the same. So if you say username here, it should also be username over here. So that is very important. So this function returns an HTTP response which says profile page for username. So here we can again see that I have enclosed this username within curly braces, which specifies that this is a variable. So let's say that when a user visits the home page followed by users/ and let's say instead of username there is a variable and the value is John. Django captures John from the URL and passes it as an argument username here to the user profile function. So the key point to remember is the variable name inside these angle brackets in the URL must match the parameter name in the view function. So that is an important thing that you should keep in mind. So let's take an example on the CodeChef platform in order to understand this. So here I am on the CodeChef platform and here in the lesson corresponding to dynamic URL routing in Django. So we'll take this example to understand dynamic routing that we just discussed. So here if I look at the file explorer, you can see that we have a project called bookstore which is created here, and under this bookstore project we have an app called catalog. So if I expand this bookstore, we can see that it has its own urls.py and also the app catalog has its own urls.py and views.py. So here on the editor we have the views.py open from the catalog app, and also we have the urls.py file of the catalog app and the urls.py of the main project. Alright, so let's try to understand how dynamic URL routing works in this example. So let me take you to the urls.py file of the bookstore app or the main app. Here you can see that we have a home function which is used to just return an HTTP response saying welcome to bookstore. So this is basically the function for our home page. So looking at the URL patterns of this urls.py file of the main project, we can see that here we have the path for the root or the home. So here, whenever somebody visits the home page, they will be taken to the home function, which is this, and it will just return an HTTP response saying welcome to bookstore. Now, followed by the home page, if somebody visits the URL catalog, that means if somebody types catalog after the home page URL, then we say include the catalog.urls. So we are using the include function in order to include the urls.py file of the catalog app. So we have already studied how to do this in the previous video. So if you have not watched that, I encourage you to watch that first. Alright, so now let's go to the urls.py file of the catalog app, which is this. Now here we can see that there are two parts defined in the URL patterns of the urls.py file of this catalog app. So here it says book slash, that means if somebody visits the home page followed by catalog and then followed by book, and after book, here you see that we have an integer called book_id. So this is the variable or the dynamic part of the URL. So this book ID can be an integer which can take any integer values. So if somebody visits catalog followed by book followed by the book ID, then the view called book detail will be called. Book_detail is the name of the function in our view. Okay, we'll come to that view. Before that, let me also show you the next path that we have. The next path is author/str, which stands for string, and author_name. So here if somebody visits the home page followed by catalog followed by author followed by the name of the author, which is a string. This is a variable or dynamic part which can take any string which will be treated as an author name. Then we will be taken to the author_page view. Alright, so let me take you to the views.py file and show you how the views look like. So remember, if you type book followed by the book ID, then we will go to the book detail view. So here if I come to views.py file, you can see the book_detail view is here. This is the view that it will be taken to. So in this view function, we can see that it takes two parameters. One is the request and another one is the book ID. So like I already told you, this book ID should match with the variable name which was passed here, which is this book ID in the urls.py file. Similarly, we have author name here. So in the next function, which is author page, you can see the request is one parameter and author_name is an exact name of the variable which we saw in the urls.py file. So when this book detail view is called, an HTTP response will be given which will say book details followed by details for the book with ID. Then again you can see that variable book_ID is used. So whatever book ID was entered will be displayed over here. And this is a variable that we are referring to. That is why it is enclosed within curly braces. Similarly, if we come to the author page function, then there will be an HTTP response which will display author page followed by books by and the author name, which is the variable that is enclosed within curly braces. Okay, so let me run this and show you how it works. So let me just click on this run button. So when we click on the run button, the server has started. And you can see on the right hand side, we have our browser and it says welcome to bookstore. So what happened is we just visited the home page here and this home function was called, which returned this welcome to bookstore HTTP response, and that is what we are seeing here. Alright, now let's go to catalog followed by book followed by some book ID. So for that, I will come to the URL part of this browser, and after this .com, I will type catalog/book, which is this book, followed by the book ID. So this is a variable, so let me just give the number 1. Okay, now if I press enter, you can see it says book details for book with ID 1. So this is the path that was taken and it went to the book detail view, and in the book detail view we can see that it says book details, which is this, and details for book with ID, book ID. So details for book with book ID and 1 because I gave 1 over here. So if I change it to 2, you can see the ID changes to 2. So it is a variable, it's a dynamic URL routing. So depending on what we type, we can see that the content of the page changes. Alright, now let's also check out this other function, which is the author page. So in order to access that, we have to type author followed by some author name. So here we come to .com, catalog should be there because they are under the catalog. Then after catalog, we have to type author followed by the name of any author. Let me say Rowling and press enter. Now here it says author page books by Rowling. So here what happened, this path was taken and it takes us to the author page view. So where is the author page view? Here it is. It returns an HTTP response saying author page, which is this, and books by author name. So books by Rowling, because Rowling was the one that I gave in the URL part. So we can see here that as per the URL that I have given, the content of the page changes dynamically. So Django automatically captures these values that I gave and they passes them into your view functions. So this is how dynamic routing works in Django. Okay, next we will discuss dynamic routing with path converters. So in the examples that I showed you, we saw something like int book ID or str author name. So these are called path converters. So path converters tell Django what kind of data to expect and automatically convert it for us. So when we say int book ID, Django knows that it has to expect for an integer type in that URL and it will convert whatever we enter into an integer. Similarly, when we say str author underscore name, Django knows that that author name is supposed to be a string. So Django provides several built-in path converters. So here are some path converters that are provided by Django. We have str, which we have already seen. It matches any non-empty string, and this is the example how to use it, which we have already seen, and it does not accept slash. And then we have int, which supports or matches any integer, and we saw the example of that as well. Then we have slug, which are slug strings, which matches letters, numbers, hyphens and underscores. And then we have UUID, which is for UUID format, and this is the example for that. And then we have path, which matches any string including the slash. So remember, str does not match this slash, but path will match the slash as well. And this is the example for using the path converter. So here is another example. Here we see that we have some URL patterns in this urls.py file. So here we have the path called articles followed by year, which is an integer. So here the path converter integer is used. And similarly, here we can see that we have integer year and integer month. And here we have slug title, which is for the slug path converter. So whenever you use these path converters, Django will automatically convert these captured values to the right Python type, like integers or strings, before passing them into your view.
Excellent. Now you know how to use dynamic routing and path converters in Django. To strengthen your understanding, make sure to complete the practice problems that are available on CodeChef for this lesson, and also check out the other path converter examples that are available on CodeChef platform for this lesson. You will get hands-on experience building a dynamic URL structure for books, authors, and movies like the examples that we saw. So let's just quickly summarize what we studied in this lesson. Dynamic routing captures parts of the URL as variables. Path converters define what type those variables should be, and these values are automatically passed to your view functions. So I hope that was clear to you. I'll see you in the next one.